Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to do something kind of wild. We are going to look at the entire sweep of human history, all through a single object, this old family Bible. Because it tells a story on two completely different scales, one that's absolutely epic and one that is deeply, deeply personal. So let's dive in.
So let's just start with this question. How do you actually measure a life? I mean, is it part of this grand, sweeping timeline that unfolds over thousands of years? Or is it measured in the small, everyday moments? The struggles, the defiance, the little bits of love. Today, we're going to see how one book answers that question in both ways, at the exact same time.
Okay, so check this out. On one side, you've got this, a printed, formal, chronological index from the Bible. This is where entire empires can rise and fall in just a single line of text. And on the other side, a handwritten family register, where a single life, a single birth, is literally the most important event in the world. And the incredible part is that both of these timelines, the epic and the intimate, exist between the exact same two covers.
Right, let's start with the big picture. And I mean the biggest possible picture. We're talking about a timeline that stretches back over 4,000 years, where history is recorded on a scale that feels, well, it feels like myth.
The first thing that just hits you here is the sheer authority of it. This isn't really a story, it's an index. It presents history as this list of settled, concrete facts. Every major event, right from creation itself, is given a precise date, all printed in these neat, orderly columns. This is history as a completely unchangeable monolith.
And just look at the scale we are dealing with here. 4004 BC, the creation of the world. Boom. A millennium and a half later, you get Noah's flood. Another 350 years go by, and Abram is born. I mean, this isn't human time. This is practically geological time. Events separated by centuries are just a few lines apart. It's a timeline so vast, it's almost impossible to really wrap your head around it.
Okay, now I need you to hold on, because we are about to slam on the brakes, hard. We're jumping from 4,000 years of mythic history to a single day in 1831. We're leaving that world of myth behind and crashing headfirst into the brutal reality of one person's life.
Meet Ellen Murphy. She's not a patriarch or a prophet from that big timeline. No, she's a statistic on a government ledger. This document right here records her arrival in Van Diemen's Land, what we call Tasmania today, back in 1831. Her story isn't measured in centuries, it's measured in days and in fractions.
And here's the thing. To the system, she wasn't even Ellen Murphy. She was convict number 136, a 19-year-old nurse girl, sentenced to 14 years of transportation to the literal other side of the world. And her crime? Stealing a fan and 4 books. That's it. For that, her life was completely turned upside down and reduced to just a number.
This is the timeline of Ellen's new life. It's not about building nations, it's about just surviving the day. Look at this charge sheet. Drunk and disorderly, absent without leave, disobedience of orders, refusing to leave the kitchen. I mean, this is not the history of great epic deeds. This is a minute-by-minute record of a young woman fighting for just a tiny shred of dignity in a system that was designed to break her spirit.
And for every single one of those acts of defiance, the punishment was swift and it was harsh. Days, weeks, sometimes months at a time in solitary confinement with nothing but bread and water. Can you even imagine? What a brutal contrast to the grand, sweeping history we saw just a minute ago. This is history at its most raw, its most personal.
But Ellen's story doesn't end there, in a solitary cell. Her timeline is about to collide with another one, the timeline of a fellow convict, whose own official record tells a very, very similar story of crime, punishment, and transportation.
So this is the record for George Mainwaring. He was a plowman and a shepherd who arrived just a few years after Ellen. And just like her, his identity was stripped away, replaced with a convict number and a list of his physical characteristics.
But look closer. Look at the remarks section. Right here, in the middle of all these cold, bureaucratic details, we get this tiny flash of the man himself, his tattoos, Sergeant Adam, an anchor and cable, a mermaid, a sailor and woman. These aren't just descriptions. They're little fragments of a life he lived before he became a number. Tiny acts of personal expression, literally inked into his skin.
And this is the moment where everything changes. On the left, you've got the official government record, 2 convict numbers, 2 separate lists of punishments. But on the right, from a totally different document, you get a brand new reality. April 27th, 1840. George, a laborer, marries Ellen. And in that one moment, two timelines of punishment merge to become one single timeline of family, of hope, of a future that they were going to build for themselves.
Which brings us right back to the Bible. Not for its ancient printed history, but to see how it becomes the living record for this new family, written by hand, right there in its margins.
Look at this, the formal family register page. This is the exact spot where the Bible transforms from a book about the history of the entire world into a book about the history of their world. From this point on, their own story of births and marriages and deaths is going to be recorded right alongside the story of Abraham and Moses.
And this is where their new timeline really, truly begins. Each one of these little ovals on the children's names page becomes a brand new chapter. The names aren't numbers in a ledger anymore. They're carefully written down in ink. And that's such a powerful act of reclaiming your own identity, of saying, these lives matter, this history is worth recording.
And it's a real history, full of both joy and absolute heartbreak. Just take this entry for Thomas Henry, born in 1842. And then, just below it, this simple, devastating addition. Died 1846, aged 4 years. That grand, biblical timeline we saw, it has no room for this kind of intimate, personal sorrow. But for this family, the loss of their 4-year-old child was an event that completely shaped their world.
And as we turn the page, you can see time moving forward. The children whose births were just recorded, well, they grow up, and now their marriages are entered right here. The family timeline expands, it starts branching out. History is no longer measured in single difficult days, but in the slow and steady passing of generations.
So where does this handwritten history, this really intimate timeline, finally end? Well, the last entry brings us surprisingly close to our own time, connecting this world of penal colonies and sailing ships right to the very edge of the modern world.
Here it is, written at the very bottom of the page, almost like an afterthought. Patricia Ann Every, born 18th of November, 1965. Think about that. This one single book holds a story that starts with a young woman in a world literally lit by whale oil, a time before photographs, before cars, before even matches existed. And it ends with the birth of a baby in the era of space travel and color television. It's just astonishing.
1965. Let's just let that date sink in for a second. That's within the living memory of so many of us. It's a direct handwritten link from a past that feels almost unimaginable to a present that feels like it was just yesterday. A true tale of two timelines, held together in a single book.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? This family's entire journey, from those convict ships all the way to the mid-20th century, was painstakingly recorded in ink on paper. Our lives, on the other hand, are recorded in scattered pixels, in social media posts, in forgotten cloud accounts. So the real question is, how will our stories be remembered, and who's going to be there to read them?